All right, good evening, and welcome to Tzfat. Welcome to Live Kabbalah over here. And we're going to be discussing today Chanukah. We're going to be discussing what the lights of Chanukah signify, the miracle of Chanukah, and we're going to try to bring that down into our practical lives. So first of all, there's nothing more recognizable than light. And light touches a certain part of the human soul. And really, out of all perhaps Jewish holidays, Chanukah is the one that is probably the most recognizable holiday. And that's actually very funny because it's not one of the biblical holidays. It's not one of the holidays that is, so to speak, the most important one. It's a holiday which came actually the latest in Jewish history. It was like added into like the repertoire of the holidays in the latest time in history. And yet, having said that, it is the most recognizable holiday. And there's a song about it, the Hanukkah song, and there's the menorahs and there's the foods of it, and it's kind of like it comes in like kind of like the holiday season, and it's kind of like it makes everybody happy, and people are like, well, there's Hanukkah and there's also Christmas, and there's and everybody could just coexist, and there is something to that, but understanding Chanukah and understanding the origin of this holiday is way deeper than just the festivities of it, and that's what we're going to try to do right now. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to have a look at actually where this holiday comes from. And what we're seeing over there is the menorah. So the menorah is not what we call the menorah, is that we light on Chanukah. That's actually called a Chanukah, and it comes from the word Chanukah, right? But the menorah, which is shaped, it was actually shaped like the one that we're seeing over there. In other words, it's just coming out of the middle column over there. And according to the Maimonides, that's what the candelabra, the menorah in the temple actually looked like. And we light the menorah on Chanukah to commemorate the lighting of the menorah in the temple. So now there's a bunch of differences going on between the menorah and the Chanukah. Okay, so starting with the first difference. First difference is if we count the menorah, there are 7 branches. And in the Chanukah we have 8. So that's number one difference. Second difference is that the menorah was lit inside of the temple, actually, and on the right side towards the south, because the way the temple was built, it was facing the west, and on the southern end of it, to the right, is where the candelabra was situated. And that's what it says, by the way, when somebody wants to gain wisdom, they should actually face to the east, to the right side, because facing the right is where the candelabra was, and the candelabra corresponds to wisdom. And if somebody wants wealth, you should stand to the left side, because that's where the shulchan was. That's where the table that stored the 12 loaves of bread, which is the whole secret of the flow of abundance from above to below. That stood on the left side. So the candelabra stood inside of the temple, okay, on the right side, whereas the Chanukah is lit outside and it is placed on the left. In other words, the mezuzah, right, which is on the doorpost, is on the right, and the menorah is supposed to be, and the Chanukah is supposed to be on the left side of it. That's difference number 2. Difference number 3 is when it was lit. So the menorah was lit during the daytime, actually before by dusk, but during the daytime, technically speaking, and that's when it was lit. And actually, it's the Talmud tells us that there was constantly a flame that was flickering, and that was called the western flame. And some say it was the middle flame, some say it was the sixth one. And why it's called the western flame is because it's kind of like facing the west in its angle. So that flame is where they started from, and that would stay kindled the entire 24 hours. And then when the priest, the Kohen, would come into the temple, he would light the flame from there, and he would light the other ones. So it was lit during the daytime. Now the Chanukah is lit at nighttime, right? So the major difference over here. So we're commemorating the kindling of the menorah, but the truth is that we're not doing it the way the menorah was actually done. Right? We should have a seven branched menorah. We should light it inside of the house, and we should light it during the daytime. But we don't do any of those things. So the question is why? So by understanding, first of all, the question is half an answer. So when we understand that there's a question there, it kind of causes us to scratch our heads and to kind of think, well, what is it about the miracle of Chanukah that necessitated this sort of lighting of the Chanukah? So by understanding that, we actually understand the essence of Chanukah. So what occurred on Chanukah itself? What occurred is that the Greeks inflicted upon the world what is called darkness. Like we saw in the writings of the Maharal of Prague, that he writes that the Greek Empire is likened to darkness because it says that there's the four kingdoms, and the four kingdoms correspond to the four levels of by the creation of the world, and the one that corresponds to darkness, choshech al pnei tehom, is the kingdom of Greece. Now, what did the kingdom of Greece do? So the kingdom of Greece, on the one hand, they were very intellectual. They were philosophers, and they were people that were involved in building. They were involved in sophistication, and they were into the body. They were into, right. So on the one hand, it seemed like they were high class. They were sophisticated, right? And what they tried to do is in fact turn the whole world to be like them and to be Greek-like. And anything that wasn't Greek-like was actually abolished. And they tried to what was called Hellenize and cause people to be Hellenists and to basically forget about anything that besides Greece and Greek culture and Greek philosophy and the Greek religion and their gods and whatnot. So the way the Talmud categorizes them is, once again, is choshech, is darkness. Now, why is that darkness? Now, it seems like, they're educated, they're sophisticated, they're high class, they're capable. So why do we call them dark? So it's explained that what did the Greeks really want to do? Now, the Greeks did not want, specifically the Jewish people, to study the Torah. They said, you know what, but by all means study the Torah. And we know that it's a very wise book. And in fact, the king of Greece, right, the Greek king, had the Bible. It's actually the first official translation of the Bible. and it was translated by 70 elders, by 70 sages. And the Talmud says he took 70 sages and he put them in 70 different rooms, and he had them all translate the Torah into Greek. And the miracle was that they all translated the Bible exactly the same way. Although there are some things which seem like they are contradictory, and they seem actually even heretical, the rabbis all changed the wording of it to sound, the right way. And that was the first translation. So the Greeks were not opposed to the study of Torah. So what were they really opposed to? They were opposed to study the Torah as a godly practice. They said, study the Torah. It's wise and it's smart. We even translated the Torah. But don't study the Torah with something spiritual in mind, as if the Torah has some sort of a spirituality to it. Forget about spirituality. We don't see any spirituality. What spirituality? All we know is what we see. And what we know is what our brains tells us. And all we could rely upon is our brains. And in fact, what the Greeks did is that they created their own gods based on their own image of what God should be. So they made God in man's image. And that's really the core of the battle of the Greeks, specifically with the temple, and specifically with the candelabra, because the candelabra represents the wisdom of Torah. That's what the candelabra represents. And the lighting of the candelabra represents the lighting of the spirituality which emanated from the Holy Temple that was built in Jerusalem. And that went to the whole world, that spirituality and that light. The Talmud says that really the light, God doesn't need light. So what's the purpose of the light that was lit inside of the temple? It was to extend outwards. And in fact, when King Solomon built the temple, he built the windows in a way that they were large on the inside. Small on the inside. Sorry, the opposite. Large on the inside and small on the outside. In other words, usually the way windows were built, they were built large on the outside and small on the inside. They were almost like to be able to take in light. It's almost like a big what do you call it? Like a satellite, which is able to take in rays and whatnot. That's how usually windows were built. But in the temple, it was the other way. It was built large on the inside and small on the outside. In other words, the light should emanate outwards. And what's that light? It's the light of the spirituality that is within the Torah. It's the godliness that was within the Torah. And that's exactly the core of this battle between the Greeks and the Jewish people and the Maccabees in the temple. And what they did is they defiled, as the Talmud says, what they did is that they defiled all the oils. And what does that mean? They defiled the oils. And in fact, what do they do by defiling the oil? It says that the oil is only fit to be used if it's actually put in a watched place and it's completely sealed. And the priests were the only ones basically that were allowed to fill up the candelabra and to use it. And what the Greeks did is that they actually said, you know what? Not a problem. We'll just touch all of your oils, and now you'll just you'll just use that. And what that means on a deeper level is that they contaminated the spirituality which is within the oil and what the oil represents. So not that there wasn't oil there. They said use the oil, and oil represents wisdom. Use the oil, fine, but use it in a way of non-purity. And really the whole idea of purity and impurity and all that, they're very like theoretical and really beyond mind. What is purity? What is non-purity? We see what it is. I mean, and the idea of purity is something which is beyondness. And that's what the lighting of the candelabra in the temple represented. So now there's a band of Kohanim, a band of actually it was a father and son's team led by Matityahu. Matityahu was actually a high priest, and his sons. He had a bunch of sons: Yehuda, Shimon, Yonatan, Levi, right? And there a bunch of these sons get together, and they said, we're standing up to this band of Greeks. They actually weren't a band; they were actually a superpower in the world, and they were able to muster up a power within that they won the war. So it comes out that really it was a victory, and it was a military victory, but this military victory was in fact a spiritual victory. And that's why how do we commemorate Chanukah? By lighting candles, by lighting light, right? And it's not to commemorate a military war, and that's actually what is done on Purim. There's the idea of commemorating the physical victory over there, and that's why we have actually a festive meal and everything. And that's a way to commemorate, because the body actually enjoys the food, and it's able to commemorate that by enjoying the food. On Chanukah, it doesn't mean that we're not supposed to have festive meals. Right? But it means it's not necessarily part and parcel of the celebration of it. The celebration is more of a spiritual celebration, because it was all really focused on the spiritual battle over here. And that's what what is called the Maccabees did. And the Maccabee is an acronym for the words Mi kamocha ba'elim Hashem, who is like you, the mighty ones, God. And that's what we call the Maccabees. They're called the Maccabees. They're called who is like you in the strong one, right? God, because that's what the sons of Matityahu drew from. They drew from the source of strength to be able to win this battle. It was a battle which was really it was an impossible battle. It's like imagine the superpower of the world is being defeated by a gang. And that's exactly what happened. It was just basically a gang of rabbis. They were Cohens, and they were basically a bunch of rabbis. And they joined a couple of other people joined in, and they didn't have any weapons or anything like that. But what they had is they had the power of God. Mi kamocha ba'elim Hashem. They had this secret strength, and actually the name for Elim comes from the word El, and that name's from God, but it also comes from the word Elam. Elam means silent. Who is like you, the silent one? And it represents actually this strength of silence, which comes from which is even unheard. So the battle over here is what is called the battle of self-sacrifice, of Mesiras Nefesh, and the Mesiras Nefesh over here is a Mesiras Nefesh of a self-sacrifice that was able to illuminate the darkness. So now let's think about this. When we illuminate darkness, we have to do what? We have to actually not just shed a regular type of a light, but we have to shed a stronger type of a light. And in fact, this answers all the questions that we asked before, right? It answers a question of why do we light the candelabra inside, and the Chanukah was lit outside. Why do we? Okay.
I didn't do it.
Okay, apologies over there. You got the kitties over here still. Baruch Hashem, on the way to bed. So this answers all of the questions. So question number one that it answers: the menorah was lit inside of the temple, and what that means is inside of the temple there was a light that was in proportion to the light which was, or to the darkness which was outside in the rest of the world, so to speak. And there was a huge level of spirituality that was drawn down through this light. And as we said before, that was the light that emanated outwards to the rest of the world. But that level of light was a level of light which was able to dispel a level of darkness, but not to transform it. Whereas the menorah or the Chanukah that is lit outside, which actually drew from a deeper strength, from a deeper level of inner strength, and that level of inner strength actually drew from a deeper type of a light that is now able to transform the darkness itself. And that was the Chanukah, and that's why it is 8 branches. Why is it 8 branches? Because the 8 branches represent a power which is beyond the number 7. The number 7 is basically finite. It represents the 7 days of the week. It represents the 7 continents. It represents the idea of the finite. But the number 8 is the idea of beyondness, right? Of beyond world. And that's why actually the word for or infinity, the sign for infinity, is like this 8 sign, which actually never ceases. It just keeps on going, just right, and just connects one with the other. And it actually is similar to a 0, which 0 is in Kabbalah, in Kabbalistic terms, the 0, there isn't. The name for 0 is Ein, is nothingness. And we can understand nothingness as being actually, well, it's nothing. But the truth is, there is no such thing as nothingness. Everything is really somethingness. But that somethingness is connected to the nothingness, which is really its source. And on the ultimate nothingness, right, that level of Ein is God's infinity, is God, right? And this is something which is in physics and metaphysics, this is like something which is, right, big right now in the news on that, on understanding our reality is really being like a nothingness type of reality. And according to Kabbalah, that's really that's the origin of it. So when we connect to reality as is, So there's two ways of relating to it. One way of relating to it is that there's reality, and then there is the above reality. So above reality and reality, right, or this world, are, so to speak, two different entities. And when we connect to the above, to something which is beyond just this world, that's sort of like the light of the candelabra that was in the temple. So now the world actually is shining with a certain light that was not felt there before. And in King Solomon's days, the whole world actually felt this type of an unbelievable wisdom. And by the way, there's many theories that say that from this wisdom of King Solomon is actually where the Greeks actually got the beginning of their wisdom. And the Maimonides, by the way, says that Aristotle's wisdom was a very high level of philosophy. And he said, and he was very, very smart. And he had this sort of a wisdom. But it because it wasn't completely enmeshed within reality, and so to speak, it's two different entities. There's spirituality and then there's physicality. So then that could lead to the kingdom of King Solomon, for example, as not being the long-lasting kingdom that it was actually supposed to be. It was, it could have been the most long-lasting kingdom and the utopian kingdom and sort of like the Mashiach kingdom, but it wasn't. Not yet. Chanukah, the last holiday that we have, really, that on the Jewish calendar and in time, represents this level of light which transcends physicality and spirituality, and those categories. And there's no categories now at this point. There's just nothingness. And from that point of nothingness, there is no darkness. Darkness itself is transformed into light. So therefore, the number 8 is what we light. We light 8 candles, and that's the reason why we're not scared to actually stand outside and to light the candelabra outside, because that represents that the outside. And actually, the Talmud puts it that we should light the candelabra until this certain nation, which were called Tarmudai nation, ceases. In other words, is not there in the marketplace. So we're supposed to, that's an interesting Talmudic term, that we're supposed to light the candelabra until the feet of the Tarmudai are not outside in the marketplace, which is a very strange sort of way of saying when to light the candelabra, when to light the menorah until the feet of the Tarmudai nation is not in the marketplace. Well, what is the Talmud saying? So Kabbalah explains that the word for Tarmudai is the letters Moredet. Moredet means rebellious, and it represents the powers that rebel against the powers of holiness. It's the opposing powers, and those opposing powers are there in the marketplace. And the marketplace is basically is the place where people make deals, and it sort of seems like it's a place of things are haphazard and things just occur and there's by chance, and it almost represents like the world as is in its natural in its state. So those Tarmudai and that nationality specifically represents a level of a spiritual level that opposes the spiritual level, and the lighting of the candelabra has to be until the light of the candelabra of the menorah illuminates the Tarmudai nationality, and that even they recognize that there is there's nothing to oppose, and that there's only that there's only one entity, and that entity of nothingness, and that entity of that the darkness itself now actually is imbued in a higher, in the true reality of not just illumination but transformation. And that's why we light the menorah was lit during the daytime, because there's sort of like this idea of day and night. Day and night represents the power of spirituality, that's day, and night represents actually the world. That's nighttime, that's darkness. So day and night. So we light the candelabra in the temple during the daytime. And from the daytime we go, and that lights into the nighttime. So that already says that we're in a way scared to light the menorah at nighttime. We need to light it during the daytime. So it's like somebody that, for example, is could only let's say debate a point in his home turf, or take even like a regular more of a sports example, a team that's only able to win on its home court. But to win on the other person's court, to win like somewhere else where everybody is like opposing them and they're booing them and everything like that, to do that you have to be really good, and you have to be really confident to take on the team in their home turf. And that's what the Chanukah is. We're taking on the power, the other side, in its home turf, and we're saying, and we're opposing, and we're defeating them. And that's why it's lit. That's why the Chanukah is lit at nighttime specifically. So what does this practically mean for us? So the idea of shemen, of oil, is really the whole miracle of Chanukah. And oil represents wisdom, and it represents chokhmah. Chokhmah is more than wisdom. It represents seeing this point of beyondness. Now, what does that mean? So, just to bring an example, what does that mean? Any inventor or anybody that has to be persistent in something, that idea has to come from a chokhmah level. It has to start off with a certain level of chokhmah, like a spark of inspiration. And that spark of inspiration is where it all starts from. So now that spark of inspiration needs to be the whole rest of the project, so to speak, and everything that will be accomplished has to be true to that original spark of chokhmah, of what is seen, of what is understood. And that's the analogy of the oil, of the uncontaminated, pure olive oil that was in the temple. It's basically the undiluted, true point of wisdom, right, of intelligence of the person. And now this is true on many, many different levels. It's true on a spiritual level. As we said, that was the whole battle of the Maccabees versus the Greeks. That they opposed the light of Torah, and the light of Torah is what that pure olive oil represents. But on also a practical level, it represents the idea of being true to a concept and being true to that goal, and that goal needs to be focused on. And that focus could sometimes lose focus in certain things, because that the focus may have been defiled, may have been made impure, because it was touched, so to speak, by foreign forces, which is not you, which is not actually your idea, which is not what you is the actual pure focus is about, and the idea of the candelabra, right, and specifically of Chanukah over here, is coming in contact with that point, and so that's on a practical side, being consistent, and this is being consistent to a goal, being consistent to a project, and just staying focused on that project based on what was drawn up originally, and not swaying from that. So now Chanukah brings out a tremendous amount of strength within us. Jews and non-Jews alike have been affected and are affected by the story of Chanukah. In fact, it's not by chance that Christmas falls out during Chanukah season, right? Because actually Chanukah came first, and Christmas is something that came, after, and the whole idea of that celebration of light of Christmas is actually drawing from what Chanukah was taught. Now it's really I just want to mention it's unbelievably unfortunate that just yesterday there was a whole situation. I was speaking about it with Angelo, with this shooting down of a whole special needs facility. When they were involved in their holiday season, and that again is like the defiling and shooting down of the power of the other side, and really what Chanukah teaches us is that no matter how dark it is on the outside, there is the inner strength which is able to go beyond that place of darkness. And where do we get that inner strength from? We get that inner strength from a place of self-sacrifice. And what does that mean? Self-sacrifice. It doesn't mean throwing yourself into a fire. It means self-sacrifice means going beyond one's own understanding, even, right? Because in order to draw this redraw from that level of purity, and sort of speak like rekindle from that place of purity, and remake that connection, one has to go beyond their identification with self, with ego, with their own understanding, and to go to a higher level of understanding, to go to a level of beyondness of what they see and what they understand. And only by doing that leads one to be able to contend with the immense powers and immense darkness, which is far more than it, stronger than they are, than he is. It's more fearsome, right? And it's unending, right? So how is it possible to contend with it? The only way to contend with it is actually not even to see it, not to see it as being dark or as being light. Only by going beyond it, as even calling it darkness, that's the only way to contend with it. And this is actually the definition of a miracle, because we know that this was a miracle that was done over here. It was a miracle. It was a miracle that we found that, first of all, that we won the war, and then that we found more pure olive oil, and it lasted for 8 days, and that was a miracle. But that miracle is different than other miracles. For example, a direct miracle. Direct miracle, that's one level of miracle. This is a miracle which is within nature. Now, how do we say a miracle in Hebrew? The word for a miracle is a nes. And nes means to be like a flagpole, like it's a banner and it's raised up. That's what a nes is. And where does a nes come from, and for who is our miracles done to, right? And there are many, and the Talmud says that one should not rely on a miracle, and that means that why shouldn't a person rely on a miracle? Because if they think that a miracle should be done to them, then that proves that they're not worthy to have a miracle. Only if a person is actually nullified, and this is really the level of the great, tzaddikim of the holy individuals, that actually they're living in a beyond self-consciousness and on a godly consciousness, and they feel a level of nothingness within themselves. So then by them, miracles are just like flowing right and left. Things are just happening. And why? Because nature is not nature. It's godliness. It's just a tool. It just looks like it's nature. And actually, how do we say nature in Hebrew? Teva. Teva means nature, and it could be two things. It could be tovea. We could actually be sinking in nature because we see nature as is, or it could be a matbea. Matbea is actually a seal, and it says that this olive oil was sealed with the seal of the high priest. And what is the seal over here that we're talking about? There's the seal. The seal is the seal of God, because matbea, the seal, it's got God, that it has God's seal on it, and everything within creation has God's seal on it. It's the DNA. It's a godly DNA that we are that we're within, and like that Maimonides says that we are within the knowledge of God. And he and his knowledge are one. So there's the godly seal within nature. So that's teva. And there's a custom on Chanukah to give a matbea. Matbea also means money. Actually, it actually means a coin. And why does it mean a coin? Because in the olden days and still now, there's a seal of a king. There used to be a seal of a king on the coin. So there's a custom to give a matbea, a coin, to the children on Chanukah, and to give them what is called like the Chanukah gifts, the Chanukah gelt, to give them coins specifically. So actually, it's not so much just giving them gifts. On Chanukah, there's the concept of giving them a coin, because a coin represents matbea, has to do with the seal, and has to do with the seal of godliness, and that we give to our children. And children represent the smallness of mind. Children are not developed, and we're supposed to educate them to have a larger capacity to understand life. And the word for that is chinuch, is education, and that's actually the word for Chanukah. The word for Chanukah means education. So in fact, we're educated on Chanukah to understand that everything around us is really godliness, and to tap into that place of godliness, and to recognize that there is a higher consciousness going on. And what do? We actually imbue that within our children. We have to teach them that there's a higher level of consciousness, to teach them to actually be less egocentric, and to be more God, to go beyond their self, right? Their own self, and in order to be able to receive from that level of beyondness. And we help them out by giving them that coin, that matbea. And there's a beautiful teaching that on Chanukah there is a connection to the hidden light. There's the hidden light, and that's why every night of Chanukah we're connected to the hidden light, which is called the Or HaGanuz. So when God created the world, He created the world and He hid His light. Where did He hide His light? He hid the light within the Torah. the lighting of the Chanukah candles represents the light of the Or HaGanuz, not the hidden light, which is felt, and we're, in a sense, we're educating ourselves with this hidden light, which is going to be revealed very shortly, and that's a light that basically shows that all of a sudden, like boop, like the lights turn on and everything is like, whoa, this wasn't darkness. I thought this was a pit hole, a pothole, and this was this, and that was that, and why did that happen? Why did that? All of a sudden, you turn on the light, you realize everything is really in control, and really there is a system to all of this, to this madness of the world and the way it's governed and creation, etc. So that's the education of Chanukah. That's the word itself. Chanukah is the education of the number 8, of the infinity. And once again, the way to celebrate it is by understanding, and by, first of all, by physically lighting the menorah, and by lighting the menorah, that we actually, and by looking at that light, we bring that light within ourselves. And again, there's nothing more powerful than light to stir the human soul, to be able to rise beyond its understanding of where it's at, of what reality really is. And when we talk about this light is actually within the Torah, and it's specifically within Kabbalah. It's within the secrets of Torah, and the word and the book of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is called the Book of the Zohar. And the Book of the Zohar is the book of light. And he used that word of Zohar specifically as being that the name of his book, because by the studying of inner Torah, we come to an understanding of this higher reality. That darkness is not darkness, really einod milvado. Nothing exists beyond God. That God is all, and all is God. And it's not two separate realities, it's one reality. And that one reality is understood and is able to be incorporated, to be able to be lived by the study of the secrets of Torah, specifically the studies of the Zohar, the studies of Kabbalah, and Tanya. So this week, I'm very happy to announce that we started daily Tanya classes. Given by a colleague of mine that will be, please God, giving them on a daily basis, and I hope by next week, please God, to start short Zohar classes, short 10-minute daily Zohar classes that will go out, and when the site is ready, please God, we'll have it on the site with the text there and in a PDF level, or
great. It's great, Rabbi. Great.
Something similar. Yeah. And as Chanukah is approaching, the way to commemorate Chanukah is the Zohar, right? Is the secrets of Torah, is that light. So there's the physical lighting of the menorah, but then there's the spiritual lighting of our menorah, and that spiritual lighting of our menorah is the lighting it through the esoteric, the secrets of Torah, the book of the Zohar and the Tanya, which illuminate our souls and which illuminate really the world around us. Because when we're illuminated, everybody, others are illuminated as well, and it causes a spiritual illumination as well. But by just even studying it, it has a capacity of illuminating the darkness. And that's what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai promised, that with this book we'll come out of exile. our exile, our inner exile, and the collective exile as well. So please God will